Stefanie, nice to have you with us today.
Hi, Guy. How are you?
Doing fine. Funny Drysdale, I should say, to be clean and clear. Before we go into the topic, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for your kind words, first and foremost. I am Stefanie Drysdale. I am a Senior Vice President of Cyber at Prescient. Prescient is a global investigations and cybersecurity firm based in Chicago. One of our most unique offerings is executive digital protection, which is assessing someone's online footprint and making sure that they know where the dangers are and protecting them.
It's all about data protection for executives, and we're going to dive now into it. But before looking at the various aspects of it, I think it would be nice if you could share an example.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, I think that the way we look at data has historically been a little bit backward in terms of, it's out there and there's nothing I can do about it. We have to remember that so much of what we do is sharing about ourselves. And that information is then compiled, repackaged, and redistributed. So if we can think of it in terms of me being the first line of defense for me, and then to go beyond that and say, okay, now that this information exists, if I search myself and not just Google, but other things as well, what can I find out about me? And what can I then go into remediation for and take down or employ, if I have a very large digital footprint, if I'm an executive, what are my resources? Who are my resources for who I can reach out to and employ their help to take down some of these things? I think we just assume that it has to be there. And it doesn't. We can take charge of a lot of our digital footprint. And I think it's really important to know at least where you stand as far as your exposure.
How much time do you need to actually have a full profile of someone?
I would say at minimum, it would take, a week and a half to a couple of weeks. The larger your footprint is, the longer it would take, the more information we're sifting through. If you're someone with a relatively small footprint, then that's somewhat simple. And if you're someone who is, Fortune 5, right, you're going to take a lot longer. We're looking at every single thing that not only you're sharing on yourself, but what are other people saying about you? What are the tweets saying about you? Are there threats? Is someone putting doxing attempts out there to try to share your home address, your cell phone numbers, your family members, so that we're employing both physical as well as digital strategies for your safety and for your privacy, as well as the protection of your company and their assets?
So I guess in most cases, you not only find the data, but it will be by context.
No, we're finding the origins, or at least the locations of this information, and kind of showing where it was potentially exposed, how you can maybe prevent this type of exposure in the future, as well as how we can take seemingly innocuous amounts of information from one place or another place and then put it all together and weaponize it. We want people to understand how the information can be utilized. Then we try to train the executive and their team to look out for these types of vulnerabilities going forward.
But now suddenly you have lots of confidential data on your side. So you will also accumulate lots of data, especially depending on the person you are checking. So obviously you take all kinds of measures to, in some sense, protect that data. That's what I would assume.
Yeah, of course, no one wants to put a target on their head or whatever. We try to keep information for short periods of time. We try to make sure that it's segmented in ways that doesn't let it get exposed through, just normal day-to-day navigation. We keep as few eyes on things as possible. And we try to make sure that the information is passed off to the correct, safe person as quickly as we can. Our goal is always to protect and not to create additional vulnerability.
One question item on mind is obviously the service you offer when you do the research. That's one service. It's not like I tell you search ultra wide or search ultra deep. Is it basically one search, one type of search? It's a question. Or
We have 4 practice areas. Cyber is just one of them. Depending on what we're doing, if it's executive digital protection and if it's a full assessment, then we're looking everywhere. We're looking open source, social media, deep web, dark web. We're looking everywhere. So that's a very broad range and it goes very deep. We're also using proprietary tools, our in-house tools that we've developed. So that's a huge part of taking this information and creating additional pivot points and identifiers that we can utilize to make sure that we're looking at not only what someone would look at if they just Googled someone and issued a couple of takedown requests. We're looking much, much deeper than that.
All the sources you find, what type can you set up and kind of continuous monitoring? When we find something, there is exposure.
So depending on what we're monitoring for, that's why, I never approach someone or a situation and say, I've got a solution for you. If I don't know what the goal is or the problem, I don't know which solution to offer you because there are so many. So if we're looking at someone's PII or their personally identifiable information, we're going to look at data aggregators. We're going to look at open source and search results. We're going to look at real estate websites, maps, those types of things. If we're looking deeper, if you want to know if someone's threatening your brand, your executives, anything like that, we're going to look at places like social media. We're going to look at Telegram channels, Discord channels, maybe foreign social media. If we're looking for imposter accounts, we're going to also look on all of those things, but we're going to be looking with a different lens. If the person is traveling and let's say they're going to some type of conference or something, we're going to geolocate, right? We're going to look at all kinds of social media, not only for the individual and the brand, but maybe the other speakers that are going to be attending so that we can make sure that if you're on a panel the same day as Elon Musk, just for proximity's sake, you may have just increased that red X on you because you're near someone who has a greater threat profile. Those types of things. And again, are we looking only for breach credentials? We're approached often by companies who've suffered a breach. So they'll come to us and say, we think we know the extent of the breach. We think we've paid the ransom or we've mitigated the threat, but we need you to monitor ongoing for instances of our data or intellectual property or credentials to show up on the dark web or any other place.
So I assume now we found the data, we made the study. Both, I think, the collection and the exploitation will, I guess, be the inputs to, I don't know how to call it, an education package in some sense. You are going to actually dispense to the executive so he knows, okay, if you do this, you're a little bit sure how the education or the training, I don't know what you call it, or the awareness would look like.
So a lot of times someone will develop maybe habits that we would consider bad habits, like reusing their passwords or using guessable or simple passwords. And so in those particular cases, it's one thing for me to just, talk to you and say, Guy, never do that. But when we're having a conversation and a debriefing with an executive and it's clear that I can show them in, 20 recent breaches that they've reused a password and it's been exposed. That's a bit of a jarring moment. And in that way, it kind of lets you have that open conversation and say, I totally get it. It is difficult, but this is the case for using unique, unguessable passwords, but also because of the complexity with that, this is also a really good opportunity to bring up password managers and talk about why those make your life a little bit easier and help you create more complex and secure passwords as well.
Assume you deal with people who are, by their job or their role, their function, very busy people, and you're very busy and you're thinking many things. Sometimes you do not have the reflex and maybe the patience to actually do the right thing. So the training is almost like reflex training.
Yeah, I think part of it is, like I said, just exposing someone and telling them you see the thing that they're doing. I am a resource they can call, and they know this. And my executives all know this, that they can reach out and go, hey, Steph, I got this email, or what do I do with this? Or so that they can actually feel like they have someone they can reach out to, that there are no dumb questions and we can have these conversations. My goal at the end of every interaction is to empower these people to do the good work that they do. So the goal is to make sure that I take care of the cyber stuff. I teach them good things, and that they can go on and do the good work that they do and not have to worry about all this extra stuff, and know that they've kind of incorporated a new lens to everything that they do.
One thing is themselves, and that's a starting point, but obviously their family at large, I would say their family could also be targeted. Or do you do the extended view and the service around that?
Yeah, so absolutely. You're correct with that one, that I could have the best OPSEC in the world, but if I'm surrounded by people who overshare and who include me in that, but to put things out there in a very exposed way, this is a car, this is a license plate, this is our vacation we're on, all of these other things. We try to train people when we're doing these debriefings to show them how the information can be weaponized, sharing their kids' birthdays, sharing locations, all of that kind of stuff. So to try to, teach them about things like that. In addition, there are often times where I'm debriefing an executive and they'll say, this is really great information. I'm not sure it'll be well received coming from me. Would you be willing to debrief again and include my extended family? And I've debriefed groups of 15 plus people to include adult children and their families and their spouses. And we'll talk about it all. So we want to make sure that they understand that this exposure creates a vulnerability in their entire circle.
I know what data is there. Some data is out there already. And you hinted that you could, to some extent, clean up the data. Is that something you do, and is there any great hope in that area, or what can be done?
So it's both, right? So some things we can change and some things we can't, and that's why the mental mindset has to kind of adjust, because once information is breached and it's in the hands of a criminal, they don't respond to takedown requests. So that won't help us. I can't go on the dark web and opt out. But outside of that, you can look at things like data aggregators, real estate websites, maps, things like that, and even impersonator accounts. And we can look at those. We spent a lot of time and energy perfecting those processes, developing great partnerships. So that, I think, is a huge part of it, rather than just, again, with the fear, just giving them this wealth of information and say, wow, you've got a lot of exposure. This is horrible for you. Have a good day. Thanks for the cash. We want to make sure that we can actually help, right? In addition to taking down what we can, educating on what we can't take down, and changing the filter through which they interact with the digital world, so that going forward, they're not creating as much exhaust for themselves that repopulates all of this. Because, the whole entire point of monitoring is to suppress the repopulation. Because if we're taking it down and we do it one time, it will come back up.
This obviously is a big effort on your side, and with a big, return on investment. And this situation exists maybe sometimes because of the role of the person. I am the executive, I am the CEO, whatever. Would the cost of this service be borne by the executive himself, or would it be even companies? Is it even, I guess, even tax deductible? How does that work?
Right. So in the majority of the cases, it's considered a duty of care for the company. Not only does it protect the executive and their family, but it gives the company a lot of information. Even if, there are a lot of situations where I debrief the principal, and the executive team or the security team is only filled in on certain details that they've been asked to be filled in on, and the subject themselves retains their privacy. They don't have to share everything. It really is up to the company. But knowing which breach credentials are out there and things like that, those are things that actually support their cybersecurity and their IT teams, make their CISO's job a lot easier, because they know where the exposure is. They know who their offenders are. Giving them this information really helps make sure that it's a broader protection for more than just the individual. There are situations in which the executive would pay for it themselves. A lot of that just depends on how they want to structure things. If it's part of a broader IRS justification for a security budget, that kind of gets into a little bit more tax code and other prerequisites and things like that. But those are options as well.
We'll indicate in the show notes how to get in contact with Prescient to find out more. And on the other hand, it seems like Prescient is quite unique in its focus on the executive. The question I have is, do you have any competition yet out, or are you lonely pioneer in that area? How does that look?
So the short answer is yes and no. My team and I are one of the very first to develop what our version of executive digital protection looks like. It is extremely unique to us. It uses proprietary tools that we've developed in-house. We look for a certain skill set in our team to make sure that they can get the type of information that we're looking to incorporate into these assessments. And they're incredibly thorough, very comprehensive, sometimes upwards of 150 to 200 pages long. So in that way, it's very unique in the space, and there is no comparison for it. In addition to, you get me and you get my debriefings and me as a resource. So that's unique as well. Other companies, they're doing similar things in that they're trying to help you digitally, but they're doing it in different ways. And it's all very important to make sure that your home network is secured, to make sure that you have some high level awareness for traffic or maybe some breach credentials. These are all really lovely things and helpful things to have. But to do it the way we do it, we're leading the charge. It is considered the gold standard.
I should congratulate you for having built that business in this way, and I think it serves a very important function. I'd like to thank you clearly for having shared with us this service and this pioneering new area in threat intelligence. I hope this will become a natural reflex for a number of people to actually give themselves personal protection versus only thinking about their company protection at large. So obviously, some people don't know about physical protection, but I think the digital protection is equally as important. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.